It's interesting reading a book that feels so timely yet so dated at the same time when it's fairly recent. I guess that's what you get when you write about the kind of the new big hot topics, though. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about The Passengers by John Mars. I read this, but I returned my copy to the library, so I don't have it anymore to show here, but here's the cover we'll put here. This was one of my Out of Your Comfort Zone October picks, this one from Stacey at the Chapter Conundrum, and is a thriller, kind of like near future techno thriller maybe, that has to do with self-driving cars, AI, that kind of thing. And I actually didn't. She broke down what it was about when originally picked, and then I completely left my brain, so I didn't fully know what it was until I started. But the base plot here is there's 8 people, and all of a sudden their self-driving cars that are fully autonomous are hacked, and it's being broadcast on live TV all over the world. And a group of people who are in like a jury for an inquest to determine fault for accidents involving self-driving cars have to choose who lives, who dies, that sort of thing is the kind of the setup here. Now, I will say this is an entertaining read. I got through pretty quickly. It's very fast paced. There's a lot going on. And so I can see the appeal here, although I legitimately don't know if I've read a thriller. I was really thinking about it and like, I feel like I must have read a thriller at some point, but it's never really been something I've actively gone out of my way for. So I couldn't think of any that I've actually read. So this may have been my first thriller. And it's a genre that is not totally for me, I think, for some of it, but I think that what this is doing, I think a lot of it was more so it's not necessarily to my taste than actually bad. But it's as far as just like entertaining popcorn read, I think this works out really well for that. The more you think about it, but it was entertaining. I do think it's interesting because it spends time at the beginning introducing all of these different people, and then we kind of find more and more about some of them as we go along. And the backstory of these people is really, really relevant. It does, though, kind of reveal things in like the gotcha bombshell way, which fits the tone, but in some cases just felt like it was really going over the top. Now, granted, again, that's sort of the point, because the hacker who's in control is trying to make this very dramatic, wants everybody watching, everybody talking about it, and that kind of thing. So I feel like some of the things that annoyed me a little bit were very intentional and made sense for the story. So that's why like I gave this a knee-jerk rating when I finished it, and then I upped it a little bit because I'm like, it deserved to be at least a 3. I think it was solid. It wasn't necessarily for me, but solid. The things though that kind of got to me a little bit toward the end was I felt like there were certain aspects, which I'm not, this isn't really a spoiler because I'm saying I'm literally contradicting myself in a way, but certain things felt like they were really predictable from the get-go, and I was right about, but then other things felt like they went really different directions, kind of there, and did a lot of it. So it was sort of a mix, and I feel like I shouldn't be annoyed about both things, but I was a little bit annoyed about both things. But I think part of it is there was like 70 or 80 pages of the falling action, and that feels like a lot for a thriller. Like we get to our crescendo, and then we still have a lot of book left, and I feel like I was a little bit less engaged through that, because I'm like, I get we're finding out things that have happened as a result of this, which I get, and normally I feel like I liked that in a book, but it felt kind of off for a thriller, so maybe it was just we spent too much time seeing what was going to happen. Some of it I thought worked, some of it I didn't, and so that was something that I wasn't a huge fan of there. With it overall. Although I think some of it, like I said, some of the things it did made a lot of sense, and I think if you like a lot of just extra bombshells even after, once again, if you're a thriller person, I think that this works for that. Now, getting back to what I said in the intro about having a book that's fairly recent and feels so timely yet so dated at the same time, this is dealing with self-driving cars. And part of the premise here, there's like bits, there's news clippings, things like that, talking about how self-driving cars have become really, really common. They're the norm, and pretty soon they're going to be required. And nobody's going to be allowed to drive their own cars. You're going to have these self-driving cars. And it's interesting because, several years ago, and this was, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the actual year that this came out, 2019. So only 5 years ago. Only 5 years ago, though, I feel like in some ways the landscape was a bit different. Self-driving cars really were the big talking point. There were people talking about eventually, is this going to be the norm? But then I feel like more and more perception of that and progress have really gone away from it because we realized that, hey, this is not great and it's not necessarily going to work. And if it ever becomes the norm, it's going to be a lot longer. So this story feels a lot less realistic now than it probably did 5 years ago, which I found interesting. But the other thing, again, only in 5 years though, is the messaging around AI, because AI is kind of put into a positive light. It's more so that like people can misuse AI as a tool, but it was looked at as a very positive light. And like you wouldn't think that would be controversial, and 5 years ago it probably wouldn't, but I feel like today it felt, which obviously it's not, because once again, different time, even though it's not that long ago, but it felt almost tone deaf just because in publishing today in the book space, we're hearing so much about AI, all of the terrible things it's doing, the crappy ways it's being used. People are just putting out AI books, AI audio, all of these things, ripping off stuff so that they can come out with all this new stuff. So having this kind of positive spin on the AI aspect within the story was interesting and just didn't land super well with me. But I get where it was coming from. There was a time where the thoughts of AI was a lot more hopeful and people were thinking of all the amazing things it could do. And it's, again, I feel like something that in the last 5 years, public perception has really soured on AI in a lot of ways, just because we've seen so much of it used in dumb or crappy ways. And so interesting as well. I think that's kind of, that's the risk you take when you're writing something that's current. Is it going to stay current? And I think this is still, these ideas are still very relevant, and just the general action-packed, like, edge of your seat popcorn type of thriller, thing, you still get all of that. So I think this is enjoyable, and I did enjoy it. There were some things that annoyed me, and like I said, I don't think I'm really a thriller person. It's just not a genre that I'm a huge fan of, but I was really glad I tried this because this fit really well in just the theme of what I wanted to do in October, and I was doing a lot of heavy epic fantasy, so having something like this to break it up actually worked out really great. And overall, I had a good time with it and trying something different, even though ultimately I don't think it's for me. So really, though, those are my thoughts on The Passengers by John Marrs. Let me know in the comments if you have read this or your thoughts on anything that I said, or if, like I said, if you're a thriller person, you might have very different opinions than I do, and that would make a lot of sense. But let me know. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and check the links also for the Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.